Our chaplain is out of the jurisdiction this morning, and so the chair calls on the member for Pine Ridge to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we are so thankful today that we are above ground and not underground. You told us in your word, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. We thank you because we acknowledge that it is in you we live, we move, we have our very existence. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for blessing us and touching us as a people and as a nation. We thank you for your grace and for your mercy. We declare, even as the psalmist, if it had not been for the Lord on our side, we would have fared what Hurricane Doreen would have done unto us as a nation. Father, we are so grateful and thankful. We ask that you touch this nation. We ask that you would touch us from the government house to the lower house, from the lower house to the upper house, from the upper house to our houses. We ask, dear God, that you would indeed bless our Prime Minister, his cabinet, the leader of the opposition, and all members of Parliament, their spouses and families represented in this House. We ask you to remember our clerks and civil servants and Commissioner of Police and Commandant of Defense Force. We ask you to remember our first responders and those who have come to the aid of those that have been hurting as a result of these hurricanes. Father God, you told us in your word that we ought to come unto you when we are burdened and heavy laden, and you will give us rest, for your yoke is easy and your burden is light. Heavenly Father, we ask you that you would grant to us as we stand in this hollow place, grant to us the deepening of democracy, and we thank you for the 290 years of parliamentary democracy celebrated. And we ask, dear God, that you would allow us to be politically mature as we move forward, as we debate and discuss matters pertaining to nation building. We ask your blessings upon this nation. We ask for your grace and your mercy, and we're grateful for the life that you have spared, and we're grateful that we're here to deliberate as to how things can become better in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Lord, may the road we trod leads us to our God as we continue to march on as a nation, forward, onward, upward, and together. You taught us to pray when we do pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Peace of the Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Brent Simonet, Desmond Bannister, Brentwood Wells, Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Dwayne Sands, Marvin Gaye, Frankie Campbell, Benicio de Aguilar, Michael Pintard, Darren Penfield, Kamal Ferrer, Lanisha Rose, Renzo Rose, Ellsworth Johnson, Philip Davis, Vaughn Miller, Patricia Parker Edstrom, Aram Lewis, Carlton Bolag, James Albrecht, Travis Robinson, Adrian Gibson, Donald Sanders, Frederick McAlpine, Hank Johnson, Mark Hume, Michael Folk, Miriam Refley Emmanuel, Reese Chipman, Ruben Raming, Ricky Martin, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Chanel Ferguson, Glennis Hannah Martin, Tice Belfort, Chester Cooper.
Honorable members, we trust that as Parliament reconvenes this morning, that we've all had a good summer despite the passing of Hurricane Dorian over Grand Bahama and Great Harbor Cove. This morning, on a sad note, we want to remember our technician who passed during the summer recess, Mr. Colin Trotman from ZNS, who has been very effective, competent, and fundamental to the parliamentary broadcast from these chambers. Additionally, we had a cultural icon that passed during the recess in John Chippy Chipman. He was not a member or directly associated with this place, but of course his family is represented here in the member for Centerville. And the history of this parliament also reflects that other family members of the Chipman family were also members of this hallowed chambers. And lastly, our colleague in this chamber, former minister in the government, Mr. Tennyson Wells, the Honorable Tennyson Wells, has passed, and his funeral is scheduled for the 11th of October, which is next week. And at this time, if we can all stand in honor of his legacy in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. May the soul of the Honorable, our former colleague, the Honorable Tennyson G. Wells, rest in peace and rise in glory. We also have another group with us this morning, the Bahamas Alliance for the Blind and Visually Impaired are with us. Can you stand for us? Thank you very much. The purpose of their visit this morning with us is to recognize the 11th Annual Blindness Awareness Month. I understand that the events to be celebrated this month will feature an International White Cane Day, which is observed on will be observed on Tuesday, the 15th of October. Also at this time, I would like to also recognize the former President of the Senate, who is with us. Can you start for us, Mr. John Henry Boswick? Honorable members, before we proceed, at this time, I wish to indicate that I am in possession of a communication from the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition. The purpose of the communication is to request a discussion for members on the passing of Hurricane Dorian. The communication seeks for this matter to be pursuant to Article 55, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and pursuant to Rule 51 of the Rules of Procedure of the Honorable House of Assembly. Now, according to Rule 51, a member may propose to the Speaker that a critical matter of immediate public importance be submitted to the House for discussion. The member proposing the matter shall present to the Speaker at least 1 hour before the time fixed for the sitting of the House a written statement of the matter proposed to be debated. If the Speaker determines that it is in order, he shall so inform the House. The proposed debate shall be allowed if as many members as constitute a quorum of the House, including the proposer, rise in their places in support if the House gives leave. The Speaker shall call upon the member who gave notice of the matter to speak during the sitting at a time fixed by agreement of the House. A proposal, this is subsection 2, a proposal by the member to the Speaker on a critical matter of immediate public importance shall, A, be submitted in specific and definite terms and not in general terms. B, deal with a particular case which occurred after the previous sitting of the House at a time proximate to the sitting day for which the notice is given. C, refer to a matter which requires the immediate attention of the House. D, take into account the probability of the matter being brought in substance or specifically before the House within a reasonable time by other means. E, relate to public affairs which ministers are officially connected and for the administration of which ministers are responsible. And F, in the terms of his application, establish that the issue is sufficiently important, specific, and urgent to interrupt for an emergency debate the business of the House for that day. Subsection 3, if the Speaker determines that the submission is out of order for proposal to the House for a debate under this rule, he shall inform the member of his decision, and that decision shall not be open to reference or challenge in the House. Subsection 4, At any time during the debate on a critical matter of immediate public importance, a member may move that the business of the House be called on, and if the Speaker allows the motion, it shall be put forthwith and decided without amendment or debate. If agreed to, the business of the day shall be proceeded with immediately, and the debate on the critical matter of public importance shall cease. Subsection 5. In the event of more than one such matter of public importance being presented for the same sitting, priority shall be given to the matter which, in the opinion of the Speaker, is most urgent and important, and the other matters shall lapse unless time allows for debate on that date. Subsection 6, this is the final subsection. Not more than 90 minutes may be allowed for debate under this rule during a sitting, and no member shall speak for more than 10 minutes. There shall be no vote on the matter at the end of the debate. I read the full rules because I believe that these rules should be interpreted as a whole. With respect to the letter that was received, I agree with the position that this is a time and this is an issue that is of critical importance. However, there are certain issues with respect to the submission and with respect to the rules under which we intend to proceed. Accordingly, what I have done to bring this submission in order is to strike out paragraphs 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 13. Paragraphs 6, that is the paragraph beginning with the people of Morris Island. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 13. And the reason for doing so is the chair is of the view that those particular paragraphs are opinionated and are not necessary for this particular submission. The chair is also of the view that with respect to Rule 51, which limits the time of debate to 90 minutes. No, not paragraph 12. With respect to Rule 51, the chair is of the opinion that to proceed under Rule 51 would limit severely the participation of the Parliament to ventilate this very important matter of public importance, in that it is restricted to 90 minutes, and each member is only permitted to speak for 10 minutes. If we examine the circumstances that we are dealing with, there are 7 members directly affected by the passage of Dorian, 5 in Grand Bahama and 2 in Abaco, which means that 70 minutes of the allotted time would be taken by those members. The Prime Minister of course, would be entitled to speak. The leader of the official opposition will be entitled to speak. And there goes the 90 minutes that is allocated. Not only that, as a consequence of the passage of Hurricane Dorian, a number of other ministers have become involved. There are shelters in New Providence, which will affect national social services. Transport, the Ministry of Transport is affected. The Ministry of Health is affected. The Ministry of Education is affected. The Ministry of Tourism is affected. And as we can see now in the news, the Ministry of Immigration in the aftermath is really affected. And so the chair is of the view, particularly as it relates to the rule, Section 51, Section 2, subsection D, which says the chair must take into account the probability of the matter being brought in substance or specifically before the House within a reasonable time. And so, having taken that particular paragraph into consideration, and particularly having heard the issue being ventilated on Guardian Radio this morning, the proposed act to amend the Disaster Preparedness Act, the bill that has been circulated, and the matters that are before me that the government intends to table today, the chair is of the view that Rule 51 is not the appropriate rule to proceed under on this matter because it will severely limit the participation of members on this parliament to fully ventilate matters relating to these issues. Now, having said that, in the spirit of the 290th anniversary of Parliament, where we are seeking to strengthen and deepen democracy, the Speaker will put this matter to the Parliament. First of all, I would table the communication received. Order that the document, the communication to the Speaker relating to the request under Rule 51 be tabled and to lie on the table. At this time, the chair would then invite members to indicate we have not arrived at that position yet. We are at the position now where the House, the Speaker is calling on the House now, where according to the rules, before we arrive at that position, members, there must be at least a quorum before we can arrive at the next position. And so all members who are in support of pursuing this matter pursuant to Rule 51 are required to rise. Honorable members, all members who seek to have this matter ventilated pursuant to Rule 51 should now rise. Thank you, members, honorable members. Honorable members, according to the rules, the House has defeated this request in that for this request to proceed, there must be a minimum of a quorum, which is 10 members must rise in support of the request. And so let the House records reflect that this matter has been defeated. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Speaker, I join issue with the process in the context of being
honorable member.
No, I understand. No, it's not the discussion.
Honorable member.
The speaker is the man which was dealt with.
Honorable member.
The speaker is you are an arbiter. You are to hear from the views of members here before you decide which
honorable member.
The speaker. And the rule, I could point to the rule.
Honorable member.
And you are wrong in your interpretation of the rule, Mr. Speaker.
Resume your seat.
You are.
Honorable member, resume your seat. The chair read the rules completely and let me just read. The rules are clear that the decision of the chair shall not be debated and shall not be challenged. Honorable member, resume your seat. Resume your seat, honorable member.
I'm not challenging anything. I do not challenge anything. What I'm challenging is the process that you're going to provide us. The process that you give. And I'm saying that you're wrong in interpreting rules. Rule 3 has nothing to do with this. And I'm going to do with what I read. But that is again.
Honorable member, let the record reflect that the comments made by the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador are expunged from the record. Now, honorable members, in the spirit of strengthening and deepening our democracy, at this time, I wish to table some documents. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me. I'm just seeking clarification, Mr. Speaker. Did you intend to have those parts of the petition that was brought, the letter that was given to the House, those portions, those paragraphs expunged? I believe that was the intent of the Speaker, the paragraphs for which you numbered. I'm just seeking clarification on that, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, the position of the chair is the paragraphs that were listed are struck out, expunged from the record, and are not to be referred to by the media. In the spirit of the 290th year of parliamentary democracy, instruct honorable members. The chair is speaking. Honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. Honorable member for Rumkey, Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Oh my God. Silent class. To the leader of
Honorable members.
I know better. That's why I'm trying to better. That's why I'm trying to better.
Honorable members. So that we can proceed. I now seek to table a few documents relating to the 290th celebration of parliamentary democracy in the Bahamas. A document giving the historical perspective of 290 years, together with a number of other documents. I now order that they do lie on the table. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Killarney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the copy of the following. Financial Statement, Antiquities, Monuments and Museum Corporation, National Museum of the Bahamas, June 2016.
Order that the document be brought up. Mr. Cloud. Actually need to bring it to me. Order that document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Amendment Regulation 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Investment Fund Act 2019, Appointed Day Notice 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Registered Stock Direction 2019, Bahamas Registered Stocks 2029, 2039, and 2049.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document will lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Registered Stock Direction 2019, Bahamas Registered Stock number 2, 2029, 2039, and 2049.
Order that the document be brought up. For the laying of documents by ministers, the chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas 2018 Annual Report.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Securities Commission of the Bahamas 2018 Annual Report.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas Treasury accounts for the year ended 30 June 2016.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Road Traffic Amendment Act 2019, Recitation Order 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Price Control General Amendment Number 3 Regulations 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
I beg leave, Mr. Speaker, to lay on the table of the House the Road Traffic Amendment Act 2019, Appointed Day Notice 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Road Traffic Amendment Regulations 2019, Appointed Day Notice 2019, SN number 20.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Beg leave, Mr. Speaker, to lay on the table of the House copy of the following: the Registered Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2019, Appointed Day Notice 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Non-Profit Organization Act 2019, Appointed Day Notice 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Beg leave, Mr. Speaker, to lay on the table of the House the Public Holidays Emancipation Day 2019 opening of shops notice 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority, IRCA, 2018 Annual 2019 Annual Plan.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Nursing Council of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas financial statements for the year ending 31st of December, 2017.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further statements. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mount Moriah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Sexual Offences Amendment Act 2014, appointed day notice 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the Gaming Amendment Regulations 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the House Operator Amendment Number 2 Regulations 2019. Whatever that means.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marathon.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, can you turn your sign around for me, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Thank you for that gracious advice. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Planning and Subdivision Prohibition to Build Abaco Order 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in this honorable House giving thanks to Almighty God for providing this opportunity for me to play a significant role in the growth and development of our beloved Bahamas. I also thank the good people of Bamboo Town for affording me the opportunity to represent them and for sending me here to give values to their voice and voice to their values. Mr. Speaker, my ministry recently advanced and this House approved legislative amendments for several innovative changes that have significant implications for the motoring public. They include the road traffic junction box regulation, the road traffic fixed penalty amendment regulation, the road traffic amendment regulation SN 20, and the Road Traffic Amendment Act 2019. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to inform that the box junction regulations and fixed penalty amendments are now in effect. I want to say it again. I am pleased to inform that the box junction regulations and fixed penalty amendments are now in effect. The yellow box junctions have been placed on a number of major thoroughfares throughout New Providence and are represented by yellow cross diagonal lines in the form of a box. They are in place to enhance safety and to keep traffic flowing at critical intersections. A simple rule of thumb, Mr. Speaker, is to only enter a yellow box junction when there is enough space on the other side of the road for your vehicle to completely clear the box without stopping. Mr. Speaker, these amendments to the Road Traffic Act regulations also seek to aid the flow of traffic. The new regulation 28 permits a driver to cautiously turn left on the red light if there is no pedestrian crossing the intersection and if there is no vehicle approaching from the traffic having the right of way. This is intended to allow traffic to move with minimal risk without having to wait for a green light, provided proper caution is observed by the motorist. As a further precaution, Mr. Speaker, measures each driver has to come to a complete stop and ensure that the way is clear prior to proceeding. This amendment, Mr. Speaker, will come into force on Monday, the 7th of October, 2019. That's this coming Monday. And the Road Traffic Amendment Act 2019 will also come into force on Monday, October 7th. Mr. Speaker, the amendments require a driver to pay outstanding fines for traffic offenses before he is permitted to renew his driver's license. They require a driver to immediately proceed to produce a driver's license and insurance certificate upon the request of a police officer. And, Mr. Speaker, it prohibits the use of any handheld communication devices while driving. Mr. Speaker, as I noted before, all of these legislative changes have been accepted here in this place. And at the time, the penalties attached hereto for violation of each provisions was set out. Given the need for significant changes in the behavior of the motoring public and the fact that October 7th is upon us, this short communications, Mr. Speaker, was and is necessary. With that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I thank the House's indulgence.
Further statements? Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the document will lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I note that the opposition wanted to commence debate this morning on the Hurricane Dorian. We'd note that later in the proceedings, I would lay a disaster bill, which will be laid today and debated next week, Wednesday. That will allow each and every member of Parliament to debate Hurricane Dorian at least 30 minutes, as opposed to just a handful for 10 minutes, and allowing only one opposition member to speak for 10 minutes. Each opposition member next week would be able to speak for 30 minutes. No, I'm carrying on. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give the first in a series of communications to Parliament in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian. Next week, Mr. Speaker, I will report on a number of other critical matters related to hurricane recovery and reconstruction. Mr. Speaker, I think it's essential that we keep the Bahamian populace informed of what had happened during Hurricane Dorian and keep them abreast as to what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, it was a month yesterday that Hurricane Dorian struck the Bahamas, devastating Abaco and Grand Bahama. The official number of deaths is now at 60, and there are approximately 424 people missing. Mr. Speaker, I ask, may we bow our heads for a moment to remember those who have lost their lives. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, as we celebrate the 290th anniversary of our parliamentary heritage, it is my privilege to rise in the People's House to thank the scores of Bahamians and residents of Goodwill who have joined hands and hearts to help their brothers and sisters on Abaco and Grand Bahama. A friend sent me a photograph of the Bahamian flag flying overseas on top of a building all the way in Sweden. It is one of the many displays of solidarity with the Bahamas in our time of need. May we at home demonstrate the same spirit of solidarity as we respond to one of the greatest challenges in our nation's history. Mr. Speaker, I wish to advise the House that I will return to Abaco this afternoon to meet with more residents affected by Hurricane Dorian. Myself and several of my cabinet ministers, including the member for South Abaco, James Albright, and we all intend, Mr. Speaker, to spend the night in Abaco. I will meet with recovery and reconstruction officials and will remain overnight in Abaco. I will also be there to once again thank those on the ground who are working day and night to assist with recovery and reconstruction. On the weekend, I will be at Eastern Grand Bahama to meet with residents and local international officials working on recovery and reconstruction efforts. The Grand Bahama Power Company has to date energized 15,500 customers. A team headed by Grand Bahama Coordinator Senator K. Forbes Smith was in East Grand Bahama on Monday, reviewing the progress on the cleanup efforts. Mr. Speaker, many Bahamians and residents on Grand Bahama and Abaco remain devastated and traumatized. There is still a vast amount of work to do to help those struggling to recover and to rebuild their lives. Their needs are our overwhelming priority. Let me once again, Mr. Speaker, thank the many first responders, NGOs, and others on the ground who are helping with the recovery efforts. I especially, Mr. Speaker, want to thank the United States Embassy and Charge d'Affaires Officer, Ms.
Stephanie Bowles, especially thank the U.S. Coast Guard and other U.S. agencies who were present from start to finish. Mr. Speaker, I want to clarify a point here. There are many who had said that the Bahamas or agencies working along with the Bahamas have not responded in a timely fashion. Unfortunately, Hurricane Dorian had figuratively fallen asleep on Grand Bahama, and the feeder bands continued to beat Abaco. The United States Coast Guard, in advance, had docked or parked supplies and helicopter in Andres and in Exuma, waiting for clearance to travel to Abaco and do what was necessary. As soon as the feeder bands had left and all clear was given, the necessary choppers were dispatched immediately to Abaco, where lives would have been saved. Mr. Speaker, I thank the many public officers and members of our uniformed branches who are working tirelessly to bring help and healing to those in need. I thank the many volunteers and individuals who are helping in the aftermath of this unprecedented crisis. In times of crisis, generosity and kindness help to heal others and to provide hope, especially for those broken in spirit. Mr. Speaker, when I was in New York last week to address the United Nations General Assembly on the impact of Hurricane Dorian and the effect of the global climate emergency on the Bahamas, I met the president of Micronesia. Most Bahamians never heard of Micronesia, a small country in the Pacific, halfway around the world from the Bahamas. But despite being on the other side of the world, the government and people of Micronesia heard the cries of the people of the Bahamas devastated by Hurricane Dorian. So the children from the Gambia in Africa who sang in support of us and expressed their solidarity and love. Micronesia, Mr. Speaker, has a population of approximately 100,000 people. The GDP of Micronesia is approximately $335 million. The GDP of the Bahamas is approximately $12 billion. Yet, Micronesia generously gave us $100,000 to aid in our recovery. Dominica, Mr. Speaker, also pledged $100,000. The Prime Minister of Dominica was the first foreign leader on the phone pledging his country's support, even as they are still rebuilding from their country after the devastation of Hurricane Irma. There are examples to us. These are examples to us, Mr. Speaker, including those of us in this House who pray to the same God. Mr. Speaker, I wish to apprise the House of the recovery efforts. The Department of Social Services reports as of September 30th that there are 9 shelters on New Providence with a total of 1,566 residents, and 2 shelters on Grand Bahama with a total of 52 residents. There are a total of 1,618 individuals in shelters. There are 3,481 evacuees registered with the Department of Social Service. And Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, as regards access to fresh water, as of September 25th, Grand Bahama, 75% piped water, 25% partner provided. Abaco, 10% piped water, 90% partner provided. The breakdown of hospital and clinics as of September 25th are as follows. Grand Bahama, one hospital, limited capacity, one field operational run by Samaritan's Purse, 4 of 11 clinics operational, 6 of 11 clinics non-operational, 1 temporary clinic open. In Abaco, 1 hospital operational, 6 of 9 clinics operational, 1 of 9 clinics limited capacity, 2 of 9 clinics non-operational. We have met with the Director General of the World Health Organization, WHO, to discuss how the organization can increase its assistance with reconstruction and recovery efforts in Grand Bahama and Abaco. I wish to note the following in terms of telecommunications. In Grand Bahama, 41% BTC coverage restored, 95% alive coverage restored. In Abaco, 18% BTC coverage restored, 100% alive coverage restored. In Outer Keys, BTC coverage restored, 2 keys restored, alive coverage restored, 95% restored. I note the following in terms of seaports. Grand Bahama, 3 seaports operational. Abaco, 3 of 3 operational. 4 of 4 marinas, docks operational. In terms of airports, Grand Bahama, 1 operational, 1 non-operational, 1 capacity, limited capacity. There's no radar at Grand Bahama International Airport. Only air traffic control tower and advisory services available. In Abaco, 4 operational, 3 limited capacity. Mr. Speaker, according to the latest information received from Grand Bahama, the commercial banks are up and functioning at reduced hours. Hardware stores such as Kelly's Hardware and Dolly Madison have reopened their doors. The Rand Memorial Hospital has full power. The 8 Mile Rock Clinic and West End Clinics in West Grand Bahama are opened and services restored. The Samaritan's Purse Field Hospital is currently offering services in the settlement of High Rock and the Rand Memorial Hospital Freeport. The Grand Bahama Utility Company has restored water throughout the city of Freeport and extending to West End community. They are actively engaged with the restoration of water supply to residents east of the Casuarina Bridge. However, there are challenges due to the lack of electricity supply because of the number of downed poles in the eastern section of the island. Teams are currently working in High Rock and surrounding communities, carrying out assessments, and every effort is being made to restore water to those areas in shortest possible time. Mr. Speaker, I wish to provide the following update on the progress made by BPL on Abaco. Power has been fully restored to all areas in South Abaco. However, due to the size of the available unit, BPL is unable to service all the communities at the same time. Accordingly, a load shedding schedule has been developed and is enforced until another unit is sourced. Work has started on the transmission line from Wilson City to Marsh Harbor with the intent of providing power to critical services such as the government complex, clinic, airport, and water company. Once the infrastructure is rebuilt, generation, will be readily available to power up these critical services. BPL is awaiting the supply of materials from Florida to begin restoration from Cooperstown to Crown Haven. And once restored, generation will be supplied to power up the northern communities. Work has commenced on restoring the grid in Grand Key, and teams are on the ground to complete the needed repairs. Further, Mr. Speaker, updates on other areas will be given as soon as they are available. A comprehensive technical assessment post-landfall revealed significant damage to all of the Water and Sewage Corporation's water pumping stations and infrastructure on Abaco mainland. Sandy Point, Crossing Rocks, Casarina, Marsh Harbor, Treasure Key, Blackwood, Cedar Harbor, and various surrounding keys, namely Green Turtle Key, Grand Key, Moores Island, and Proceedings Key, were all adversely affected. As of Monday, 30th September, the following areas are online. Total of 439 customers. Sandy Point online with BPL supply. Casarina online with BPL supply. Crossing Rocks online with BPL supply. Cherokee Sound online. Partially online areas of Cedar Harbor and Moores Island. Marsh Harbor, Treasure Key, Blackwood, Green Turtle Key, Grand Key, and Proceedings Key remain offline. The Moores Island reverse osmosis plant is operational and water is now being distributed to customers. Well water was restored to the Marsh Harbor International Airport. The Casarina well field is now connected to BPL, so the system is now in normal operation. The Water and Sewage Corporation continues to conduct water quality testing on Abaco and the Abaco Keys. Samples are being tested at both New Providence Water Quality Laboratory and an international independent lab, and results are expected shortly. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance is overseeing a comprehensive economic and social impact assessment being conducted by a team of local and international technical experts. Presently, there are 40 members on the ground from IDP and Ministry of Finance who are assessing and plotting the way forward, after which IDP will present a strategic plan as to the way forward and mapping out and rebuilding Abaco. This assessment will paint a picture of the economic activity that was adversely affected by Hurricane Dorian. Through this process, we are factoring in all of the businesses that were damaged and can no longer generate economic activity, whether in the medium or long term. We are factoring in all the critical infrastructure that has to be rebuilt: roads, bridges, seawalls, utility systems, etc. And of course, we are factoring the cost of temporary and long-term housing and other socio-economic needs. The assessment will put a dollar value on all of the damages, revenue losses, and other costs to the government and private sector. The two main partners in this comprehensive assessment are the IDB and the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC. When the work is completed in a number of weeks, the assessment will establish the dollar value of the impact to the country's gross GDP, domestic product. The members of the assessment team visited Grand Bahama yesterday and are currently on the ground in Abaco. After visiting each of the affected islands and speaking with local and national authorities and private sector entities, the team will analyze quantitative and qualitative data. The data, Mr. Speaker, will be categorized in the three main sectors that sustained widespread and generalized damage and destruction. The social sector is broken down into health, housing, and education. The infrastructure consists of transportation, power, telecommunications, and water. The productive sector is mainly split between tourism and fisheries industries. Mr. Speaker, in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, emergency relief and supplies were of the utmost urgency for search and rescue and saving lives on Abaco and Grand Bahama. What is also urgently needed during the ongoing recovery and reconstruction phases is quick access to critical funds by the government of the Bahamas. I repeat, Mr. Speaker, what is also urgently needed during the ongoing recovery and reconstruction phases is quick access to critical funds by the government of the Bahamas. I wish to update the House on funds available for ongoing recovery and reconstruction. Mr. Speaker, earlier this year on April 8th, the government of the Bahamas signed an agreement for a $100 million contingency loan facility for natural disasters with the IDB. I noted the following during the ceremony for the loan signing. I quote, recent natural disasters and extreme weather conditions around the world and in the Bahamas indicate that the effects of global warming are increasing. I note reports completed by the UN ECLAC on the impact of hurricanes Joaquin, Matthew, and Irma to the Bahamas. The direct damage, losses, and additional costs were approximately $828 million. I also stated at that time, Mr. Speaker, we must maximize our ability to recover as quickly as possible in order to quickly get our communities and the economy back on track following catastrophic events. A key part of any readiness plan is to have access to resources as quickly as possible to speed up response and recovery efforts. The CCL is a line of credit that is on standby in the event that we are hit by a hurricane and require additional funds for recovery. By design and by government policy, these funds can only be accessed in response to natural disasters. I went on to say, Mr. Speaker, any prudent government would do what we are doing. That is, to have the ability to access funding if and when needed. This approach is consistent with developing an effective financial strategy to deal with disaster preparedness, end quote. Mr. Speaker, it is most fortunate that we put this facility in place in April. Unlike past hurricanes, the Bahamas is able to quickly draw on this $100 million facility because of the foresight of this administration. I wish to advise the House of the preliminary estimates of how these funds will be spent. I note that these estimates are subject to adjustments and further refinement. The proposed use of the funds are as follows. Electricity restoration, $30 million. Water restoration, $15 million. Enhanced social welfare spending, $30 million. Debris removal and cleanup, $15 million. Reimbursement of evacuation and shelter cost, $1 million. unallocated funds, $9 million. Mr. Speaker, in November last year, the government amended legislation on dormant accounts to provide for the use of those funds for a disaster relief fund. I wish to remind the House what I said at the time on how dormant account funds would be used. And I quote, "It is not my government's intention to view these funds as a windfall for use in meeting normal budgetary operations. As a responsible government, we are proposing that these funds be utilized for establishing the proposed disaster relief fund and that was foreshadowed in the most recent budget exercise." Where they went on, as a country, we are faced with the increased incidence and severity of hurricanes, which adversely affect fiscal sustainability and economic resilience. I also said during the debate, Mr. Speaker, on changes to the dormant account legislation regime. We constantly receive inquiries from credit rating agencies, investors in the government's international bond and institutional lenders about definitive measures being taken by the government to mitigate the risk associated with natural disasters, which could create havoc on our fiscal situation. I warned during the debate, quote, "Climate change and global warming have increased both the frequency and ferocity of hurricanes in our region. And unfortunately, what used to be 1 in 100-year tropical events are now 1 in 10-year tropical events. So for the Bahamas, it is unfortunate, not a matter of if we will be hit by a major storm in the medium term. The question is only when. I went on to say, Mr. Speaker, any responsible government must plan accordingly. And when presented with an opportunity such as this, it must resist the temptation for short-term measures and instead to do the right thing with this windfall and for the right reasons. I also noted, no matter who sits in the seat of governance in the future, this should not devolve into some sort of slush fund to be used irresponsibly for narrow political ends, at least not without the public being fully aware. I further stated the proposed use of the funds will also redound to the benefit of all Bahamians as we seek to fortify our ability to respond to natural events that could destabilize the best of economic and fiscal plans. Mr. Speaker, once again, it is fortuitous that this administration had the foresight and forward thinking to deploy these funds for disaster recovery and reconstruction. The dormant account funds are under the care of the central bank, which has recommended that the government use no more than half these funds. The Ministry of Finance will determine and coordinate the disbursement schedule with the central bank. Dormant account funds, Mr. Speaker, total approximately $40 million. We will utilize $20 million for recovery and reconstruction. And the funds will be utilized as follows. $10 million to support for small businesses in the Special Economic Recovery Zone. $5 million support for temporary housing accommodation in the affected areas. And $5 million support for other Hurricane Dorian recovery efforts to be determined. The Ministry of Finance, Mr. Speaker, will also liaise with the Minister responsible for disaster preparedness, recovery, and reconstruction and obtain his consent in respect to the utilization of the $5 million for yet to be determined recovery efforts. Mr. Speaker, last year, May, the government of the Bahamas renegotiated the country's catastrophic risk insurance facility with the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility, CCRF. The renegotiation divided the Bahamas into 3 distinct zones and structured payouts to allow for more relevant and fair assessment and payouts after an event. The Bahamas had 3 tropical cyclone policies and 3 excess rainfall policies with CCRF, each covering a section or zone of archipelago, northwest, southeast, and central. The government received, Mr. Speaker, $11,527,151 from the triggering of this tropical cyclone policy and $1,295,002 from its excess rainfall policy for the Northwest Zone, which includes Abaco and Grand Bahama. The government of the Bahamas has received a total of $12.8 million from the CRIF CCRF insurance. It is most fortunate that we restored this facility after it was previously canceled, a matter which should be debated on another occasion. Mr. Speaker, NEMA has received a number of monetary donations. At the end of 30th of September 2019, NEMA has received monetary donations totaling $5 million, I want people to listen carefully, at the end of the 30th of September of this year, 2019. NEMA has received, I promises, received monetary donations totaling $5,159,007.52. These funds received do not include pledges. The breakdown in donations is as follows. Corporate, $1,362,025.02. Private, $1,325,388.97. Foreign government, $901,250. NGOs, $345,343.53. And intergovernmental, $225,000. I also want to note, Mr. Speaker, that a young lady whom I do not know from New York sent a check for hurricane relief, personal check of $50, which was directed in my name. I gladly signed that over and delivered that to Mr. Nehman. I note, Mr. Speaker, that the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, will contribute $1 million for Hurricane Dorian recovery efforts. The UNDP funding will guarantee technical assistance and early recovery interventions for crucial areas according to the program. It will also help promote environmentally sustainable, resilient infrastructure, develop national and local capacities for disaster risk reduction and recovery, and support livelihoods and economic recovery of most vulnerable communities. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Bahamian people, I thank the following who called to show their support for the Bahamas. His Royal Highness, Prince Charles, head of the Commonwealth. United States President Donald Trump. Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. Dominica Prime Minister, Roosevelt Skerrit. Jamaica Prime Minister, Andrew Holness. St. Lucia Prime Minister Alan Chastity, former U.S. President Bill Clinton. I thank the following leaders who visited, and of course, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank the following leaders who visited the Bahamas: Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley, St. Lucia Prime Minister Alan Chastanet, Premier of the Cayman Islands, the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Turks and Caicos Premier Charlene Cartwright Robinson, CARICOM Secretary General Ambassador Irvin LaRocque, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, United Nations Under Secretary General Mark Lowcock, who is responsible for humanitarian affairs and emergency relief, World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, President of the International Red Cross and Crescent Society, Dr. Francesco Roca. I also thank various senators and members of the House of Representatives of the United States of America, as well as the Governor of Florida and other state and local officials. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to personally thank the Prime Minister of the British Virgin Islands, Andrew Frey, who called me every morning at 5:30 to offer support and condolence to our people and continuously offer support and encouragement. Also calling every morning was Mayor Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, Alan Chesney, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, and Dominica's Prime Minister, Skerrit. Mr. Speaker, when I spoke at the UN last week, I said to nations of the world, I quote, "Please come and visit one or more of the 14 major islands in the Bahamas not affected by Hurricane Dorian, including Nassau on the island of New Providence." I told them, I quote, "The revenue from tourists visiting the Bahamas will play a vital role in restructuring, reconstructing, and rebuilding the affected areas." The 193 member states applauded as a sign of solidarity with the Bahamas. On the flight home from New York, the captain of the aircraft, Delta Airline, invited me to speak to the passengers, who I thanked, not JetBlue, Delta, who I thanked for coming to the Bahamas. Their applause was a resounding show of support for the Bahamas. Today, Mr. Speaker, Senate President Kay Forbes Smith is speaking to the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce on my behalf and on behalf of the country. She noted in her remarks, as we rebuild and reconstruct Grand Bahama and Abaco, we will continue our program for economic growth and the ongoing recovery of the Bahamas. As we enter the reconstruction phase of this crisis, friends from around the world have asked repeatedly what we need. For the Bahamas to rebuild Abaco and Grand Bahama, there are two ways you can directly help. We need your investment dollars, and we need you to come and visit. The financial crisis of 2008 and the subsequent Great Recession were severe to the Caribbean. For us, the decade after 2008 was a period that wavered between recession, stagnation, and low growth. Our government's policies helped restore the economy. We grew by 1.4% in 2017 and by 1.6% 18. We were hopeful of growth at or above that level in 2019. Dorian now presents obvious challenges for our nation. On September 22nd, the government announced that East Grand Bahama Abaco and Abaco Keys will be designated as special economic recovery zones for an initial period of 3 years. This designation will enable these communities to benefit from a broad range of tax breaks and incentives. As special economic recovery zones, new measures will include duty-free purchases of designated material, a waiver of business license fees and real property tax, a value-added tax credit, establishment of a $10 million loan guarantee and equity financing program, extension of the provisional business license program, and the establishment of a business assistance one-stop shop. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to announce that these incentives have also been extended to the entire Grand Bahama for 1 year. We welcome international investors. We welcome international investors to join us in this rebuilding effort. The scale and scope of the destruction is great. As a small island development state, we cannot complete this journey alone. The Bahamas had a historic year in tourism in 2018. 6.6 million people visited, and we still await the $7 million man. We projected more success this year. The Bahamas had expectations of passing the 7 million visitor mark. While Dorian's impact slows possibilities for Abaco and parts of Grand Bahama, we want you to know that the rest of the Bahamas is open for business. The President of the Senate ended her remarks on our behalf with these words, with which I wish to end. As challenging as times are, there is a resiliency to the Bahamian character that means we will overcome. There's a sadness at home for those who lost their lives. We will mourn with their relatives. We will honor their memories. But after this period of mourning, we will rise again. Mr. Speaker, there's much work ahead, but we will rebuild. Yeah. We will be made stronger, and we will be made whole again. Yeah. Through the grace and guidance of the Almighty God. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I will return to this House next week to advise of other critical matters and developments. I will inform the House of the use of helicopters versus drones to continue monitor our borders and our land so as to avoid any influx of illegals and development of shanty towns. We find that this type of monitoring is much less expensive than compounds, eating, and subsequent repatriation. Speaker, I've said before that we will, and we will report on this, we will eradicate shanty towns and return law to our country. I've heard noise, and I will report on this also next week, Mr. Speaker. I've heard noise about the property of the shanty towns, but I've informed the Attorney General to compulsory acquire the mud, pitch and pea, sandbanks, and other related areas. You'll be informed of the arrival of trailers, mobile trailers for government workers, so that our government may function properly. You'll be informed of temporary and development of permanent housing. You'll also, after completing that debate, Mr. Speaker, sometime next week, it is my intention to travel throughout the Family Islands and inform them of what impact Hurricane Dorian may have caused them and how Hurricane Dorian had affected the Bahamas. Today we will lay the disaster preparedness bill, and that would give the opposition an opportunity to debate this matter next week. Mr. Speaker, I have informed the EU ambassador to Belgium, Ms. Maria O'Brien, who has also had mission to the European Union, to commence discussion with the EU to see how they can assist us in establishing shelter centers, starting here in New Providence and Exuma. I will also inform this Parliament about a new land policy where we would provide land, a new land policy where we would provide land for developers, and the land would be a part of government's input in addition to all the various tax incentives, so that developers will have an opportunity utilizing all the duty-free concessions to develop affordable homes for our people. Next week, we hope to table the authority bill, giving the authority the legal power and strength to make quick and efficient decisions. This morning, Mr. Speaker, I met with representatives of the IOM, the International Organization of Migration, and they were informed that we are a country of laws, and our laws with respect to illegal immigrants will be carried out. However, they will be carried out in a humane manner. Therefore, I send a notice to all those who are illegal that they can leave voluntarily, or they will be forced to leave. I also would report, Mr. Speaker, about the additional 150 men, that is, police and defense force officers, who are being dispatched to Abaco to ensure safety. But, Mr. Speaker, the beauty about the debate next week would allow each and every member of this House, all my cabinet ministers, to report on their various ministries as to what they have done and the way forward. Each member of Parliament will have an opportunity to speak for a half hour, and the opposition, as opposed to only one speaking for 10 minutes, each will be allowed to speak for half hour. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much.
Further statements and order that the communication be brought up. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island, Rampions, and Salvador.
Mr. Speaker, we have heard the government's report on the hurricane. We too have a view and a report from our perspective, and I wonder. First of all, I want the Prime Minister to be able to at least take my call and speak to me. I'll ask him that, and I asked him publicly. Right. So now I want to say to Mr. Speaker, I would wonder that I wish that the government consider
that we not only have the half hour, but if each of our members could speak for at least an hour, and I for 2 hours. No, there's no rule to it, but we could. There's no rule for it, but the Parliament could agree, right? If the Parliament could agree.
That also rules in Parliament. The law is
Mr. Speaker, that rule could be relaxed by us agreeing to do so. I'm only asking whether the government will consider agreeing that we expand the debate rules. If they say no, then I understand. But I'm asking them to consider it. They could, we could agree.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
No, he told me I would speak to you. He told me I would speak to you. That's why I asked you. I would not have raised the question of you speaking to me. No. But he can listen to you.
Order that the communication by the member for Kalani to lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers.
No further statements, Mr. Speaker.
Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills.
First reading of the bill.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Disaster Preparedness and Response Act to provide for evacuation, disaster, and relief order to be made by the Prime Minister and for connected purposes.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Second. I need a copy. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Disaster Preparedness and Response Act to provide for evacuation, disaster, and relief order to be made by the Prime Minister and for connected purposes. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Disaster Preparedness and Response Act to provide for evacuation, disaster, and relief orders to be made by the Prime Minister and for connected purposes.
Further first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Speaker, I rise and beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to provide for the exemption of payment of fees to replace government-issued documents that were damaged or lost by any person who, on the first day of September 2019, resided in any of the islands impacted by Hurricane Dorian.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Order that the notice be brought up, the bill be brought up. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read for the first time. A bill for an act to provide for the exemption of payment of fees to replace government-issued documents that were damaged or lost by any person who on the 1st of September 2019 resided in any of the islands impacted by Hurricane Dorian. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be introduced and read for the first time.
A bill for an act to provide for the exemption of payment of fees to replace government-issued documents that were damaged or lost by any person who, on the 1st of September 2019, resided in any of the islands impacted by Hurricane Dorian.
For the first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a suite of environmental bills this morning. And in light of the historic nature, with your leave, I would like to say just a few words.
Granted.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, are we going to do each bill one at a time?
No problem, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to establish the Ministry of Environment to oversee the integrity of the environment of the Bahamas, to make the minister responsible, therefore a corporation sole, to establish the Environmental Administration Fund and the Environmental Trust Fund, and for matters connected thereto.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read for first time. A bill for an act to establish the Ministry of the Environment to oversee the integrity of environment of the Bahamas, to make the minister responsible, therefore, a corporation sole, to establish the Environmental Administration Fund and the Environmental Trust Fund, and for matters connected thereto. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be introduced and read for the first time.
A bill for an act to establish the Ministry of the Environment to oversee the integrity of the environment of the Bahamas, to make the minister responsible, therefore, a corporation sole, to establish the Environmental Administration Fund and the Environmental Trust Fund, and for matters connected thereto.
For the first reading of bills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time in this honorable House the following bill. A bill for an act to establish the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection to provide for the prevention or control of pollution, the regulation of activities, and the administration, conservation, and sustainable use of the environment, and for connected purposes.
Is there a seconder? Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read for the first time. A bill for an act to establish the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection to provide for the prevention or control of pollution, the regulation of activities, and the administration, conservation, and sustainable use of the environment. and for connected purposes. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to establish the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection to provide for the prevention or control of pollution, the regulation and activities and the administration, conservation and sustainable use of the environment, and for connected purposes.
For the first reading of bills, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read in the House for the first time the following bill. A bill for an act to prohibit single-use plastic foodware and non-biodegradable, oxo-biodegradable, and biodegradable single-use plastic bags. Prohibit the release of balloons, regulate the use of compostable single-use plastic bags, and for connected matters.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Speaker.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read for the first time. A bill for an act to prohibit single-use plastic foodware and non-biodegradable, oxo-biodegradable, and biodegradable single-use plastic bags, prohibit the release of balloons, regulate the use of compostable single-use plastic bags, and for connected matters. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time.
A bill for an act to prohibit single-use plastic foodware and non-biodegradable, oxo-biodegradable, and biodegradable single-use plastic bags, prohibit the release of balloons, regulate the use of compostable single-use plastic bags, and for connected matters.
For the first reading of bills, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Marathon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time in the House the following bill. A bill for an act to amend the Bahamas National Trust Act to expand the duties of the Bahamas National Trust, to revise the constitution of the council, to expand authorized capital investments, and for connected purposes.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Bahamas National Trust Act to expand the duties for the Bahamas National Trust, to revise the constitution of the council, to expand authorized capital investments, and for connected purposes. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Bahamas National Trust Act to expand the duties of the Bahamas National Trust, to revise the constitution of the council, to expand authorized capital investments, and for connected purposes.
Further, first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read in the House for the first time the following bill. A bill for an act to amend the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund Act to further strengthen the provisions of the Act in order to enhance the operations of the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund and for connected purposes.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund Act to further strengthen the provisions of the act in order to enhance the operation of the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund and for connected matters. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund Act to further strengthen the provisions of the act in order to enhance the operations of the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund and for connected matters.
Further first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read in the House for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Tariff Act.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Tariff Act 2018. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Tariff Act 2018.
Further first reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. Committee of the whole House. Third reading and passing of bills. Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Members' statements. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Abaco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I realize we are returning to this House next week to begin the discussion and the debate in earnest. But I did not want to, I felt it would be remiss of me to not take the brief opportunity to speak through you, Mr. Speaker, not only to all of my colleagues here, but of course, my constituents and the general Bahamian public. By now, most of you have all seen the photographs and the videos. Many of you have even set foot yourself on island in the aftermath of the hurricane. But for those of us who went through it, I can assure you it is an impossible thing to describe. The sheer horror and panic that we as a community faced. We're a strong people, Mr. Speaker. We're a very strong people. This storm has tested our mettle. But the spirit of the Bahamian people and the people of Abaco, as long as Abaconians live and breathe, the spirit of our island cannot be broken. I will not speak too much in detail, as I mentioned, because we are returning, and very shortly I'm traveling with the Prime Minister as well as several other parliamentary colleagues into Abaco once more. It's not, I ask all of you to please remember that it's not just the splintered trees, the warped metal, the foundations of rubble, which once were family homes. Our worlds are gone as we knew them. Everybody's. We will weather through, and we will come back, Mr. Speaker. We will come back stronger and better than we were before. I want to reassure through you once again, Mr. Speaker, to my constituents specifically that as long as I'm here, and I have breath in my body and any ounce of energy and power to do so, I know their concerns, I know their heartbreak, I know their struggle, because I lived through it. It's my home as well. It's our home. And I will do everything I can to fight for it and make sure we get exactly everything we need. Everything. And that comes down to every issue that we've all spoken here in this place, Mr. Speaker, not least of all, of course, with safety and security. Abaconians are strong, we're ready, we're willing, we have the desire to rebuild, to come back. Younger generations, older generations, we are ready, Mr. Speaker. And hopefully very soon with the provision of the additional law enforcement measures and other measures which I've spoken with my parliamentary colleagues about, as that is going to be the key moving forward. As soon as Abaconians feel safe to return, we can rebuild and begin that process in earnest. I just wanted to stress that point specifically, Mr. Speaker. As a parliamentarian and a representative, it's my initial duty to make sure that the House and the Bahamian public understands I was in my house, riding it out just like everyone else, the same exact position. But I won't let that distract me, Mr. Speaker.
Don't be distracted.
So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to reassure all my constituents that I'm doing all in my power to assist them and bring them the safety, the security, and the dignity that they deserve, and that their lives are not political chips to be played for convenience in the House of Assembly. So, Mr. Speaker, with that few words, I will conclude as we get ready to depart very shortly into Abaco. So thank you all again, colleagues. We have so much work to do, but we can do it together. We can do it together. Thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you, honorable members. Just before we proceed with member statement, just advice to persons in the gallery. You're not permitted to speak during this parliamentary session. You're not permitted to make comments, even congratulate a member. That is prohibited. And so hopefully you won't require me to use Rule 88 with respect to any disruption of the proceedings. Further member statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Abaco.
In his time of distress, in Psalm 121, the psalmist David declared that I would look unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord. He made heaven and earth, and he will not suffer our foot to be moved. Behold, he that keepeth Israel did neither slumber nor sleep. And so he that keepeth Abaco, Mr. Speaker, did neither slumber nor sleep. So I wish to begin by... I want to begin by expressing condolences to all of those, including my family, who've lost people as a result, lost relatives and family members, and close friends and associates as a result of Dorian. With that said, Mr. Speaker, Dorian signifies, in my mind, a moment unique in the short history of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. But the response to Dorian has been a most heartwarming and most gratifying. Thanks for the outpouring of love and goodwill, solidarity, and kindness that we have received since Dorian. And so we ask for continued tolerance and patience. To those who live in New Providence and those islands that have received some of our people who've been displaced,
We ask for little tolerance. We know it's difficult at times. Each of us have people and relatives and friends in our homes, and there are certain islands that I would mention next week who received a lot of people from Abaco. I recall being asked by the Prime Minister of Antigua, Trinidad and Tobago. He asked me, Darren, how are you doing? And I said to him, PM, we are a people that have survived the Middle Passage. Most of us in Abaco who are not from that heritage of loyalists have come from a background of people who have proven their resilience. We are a resilient people. We see the challenges, but we see also, Mr. Speaker, the opportunities. The opportunities that are there for Abaconians, opportunities that are there for Bahamians by and large. And I echo this sentiment from the Prime Minister and from my colleague, James Albury. We will rebuild better, stronger, and more resilient communities in Abaco. We will rise. Thank you.
Papa, proud of you. What?
Further member statement. The chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I too would like to just rise to say briefly, to share in the sentiments of the members for Abaco, to give the assurance to our people that we will continue to work on their behalf to ensure that we not only build back, but we build back stronger and better than before. Mr. Speaker, as the member for South Abaco said, we will have an opportunity to speak next week, and so I'm going to be very brief. This is difficult times, Mr. Speaker, for all of us, and certainly those of us who have lost constituents. It is a heavy burden that we bear as you not only recognize the loss of those families, but as representatives, we share the burden and the questions that arise as a result of what you, in hindsight, could have, should have, would have done if you understand and understood and knew what the results could be. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I believe that the record is fairly clear and history will judge. I just want to say to my constituents that we continue to provide the services that they need, that the relief supplies are available at the various NEMA warehouses in Freeport. And I know that NEMA is moving their warehouse at the moment from the Freeport Ship Services, who we must thank publicly for allowing NEMA to set up and take control of their warehouse from the immediate day after the all clear. They've been tremendous corporate partners, and I want to thank Jeremy Cafferata and his family and his shareholders and all of his employees for the tremendous offering and outpouring of love that was shown to the community of Grand Bahama through the use of their warehouse space and their equipment to ensure that the people of Grand Bahama were able to get the relief that they needed in the aftermath of that storm. The NEMA will be moving, as I understand it, to the fenestration glass building on Queens Highway, as well as trying to set up distribution centers, satellite distribution centers in the various constituencies so that the relief supplies are made accessible or more easily accessible to the residents. And I believe that there's a plan to use the urban renewal centers in the constituencies as that point. The far east of Grand Bahama being some significant distance from Freeport and from the Urban Renewal Center, we are seeking to establish a base in the east where the people can walk to that center, because one of the underestimated or underappreciated situations in Grand Bahama is the loss of transportation. We have a significant challenge in Grand Bahama in getting people to locations and or getting goods to people, because we lost so many vehicles in this incident. And so we're going to try to make it easier by taking the relief goods into the communities so that people can walk and get whatever they need as easily as possible. So I just want to, again, I know that this is week 4 now, and the residents, as is expected after any major catastrophe, are starting to get restless as they look towards the government to provide relief. Patience is wearing thin, as would be expected, because people want their relief as quickly as possible so they can get back on with their lives. But I want to encourage people to continue to work together. We have done well so far, and I want us to continue to work together to ensure that we can get to the restoration phase as quickly and as orderly as possible. This is a significant challenge. It not only affects Grand Bahama, but it also affects Abaco, and both in significant ways. And so the effort that is going to be needed, the resources that are going to be needed, both financial, human, and physical resources, equipment resources, material resources that are going to be needed to help the people in a tangible way, is going to take time. This is not an overnight fix. But as the Prime Minister has indicated, we are looking to addressing the immediate shelter needs. We have been addressing the immediate food and living needs, and we will now move towards looking at how we rebuild and how we get people back into their communities and into their homes as quickly as possible. And so I ask for patience, I ask for understanding, I ask for us to continue to work with one another, to continue to be community partners and continue to be our neighbor's keeper as we go through this difficult transition phase together. Mr. Speaker, I would only conclude by joining all Bahamians and people from around the world in expressing condolences to those families who have lost loved ones that have been identified already. These are very, very dim days for us as communities, Mr. Speaker, and we share in the loss of persons who are near and dear to us. Again, Mr. Speaker, before I take my seat, I'd just like to express condolences to the Nemore family on the passing of Ms. Paula Nemore, the wife of the late Basil Nemore, who was a well-known builder in this country. Ms. Nemore was a retired nursing officer, principal nursing officer, having spent some 37 years in the healthcare industry in this country, serving the public. And she certainly has contributed not only in that sphere, but also in sports. And we certainly want to recognize and remember her, to pray for her family and assure them of our continued concern and support. I'd also like to express condolences to the Wells family, Tennyson Wells, a good Long Islander, who happens to be a cousin of mine, and a man who has also not only achieved much in his private life, but has also given significant contribution to this country through his public life. And I am sure that his legacy, not only in the ministries that he would have held, but also in his last few years in the VAMC and the restructuring of that organization, will well mark the legacy of his life. And finally, just to recognize the passing of a cultural icon in this country, in Mr. John Chippy Chipman, who was laid to rest last weekend. Unfortunately, couldn't make the funeral. But we do want to express our condolences to our colleague Reese and his family for their loss. But this is a gentleman who all of us of a certain age would recall as a well-known and colorful character in our history. And those of us certainly who would have witnessed his skill and talent and creativity will certainly have fond memories of his life and his legacy. And so we remember him also during this difficult time as we celebrate the life of all those who would have passed in recent times. Again, I want to say to the people of East Grand Bahama, we are working. We continue to try and do our best to provide the relief and the support. We are moving into a new phase, and you will hopefully be able to see the results of that in a tangible way in short order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity, Speaker. Just wish to speak after, happy to speak after the members most affected by the hurricane, Mr. Speaker. But I wish to do two things very quickly, Mr. Speaker. Speak to the hurricane issue, and then secondly, with your leave, Mr. Speaker, speak to the 290th anniversary celebrations we celebrated in the last few days. Speaker, firstly, as I would not be able to contribute to the debate next week due to Commonwealth Parliamentary Association commitments that I can't get out of, unfortunately, and haven't spoken to the leader of government business and yourself, Mr. Speaker, I wish to just add that people of Tall Pines support the bills that will be brought to the House next week. I've already added my comments and my parliamentary team. And to say that I want to also commend the Prime Minister and his colleagues for the work they've done. Tall Pines, we're very supportive and very appreciative of what the Prime Minister and his team has, and other members have been able to do. Tall Pines, Mr. Speaker, we have made our contribution. Particularly, I'd like to thank the mayor and the people of the city of Miami Gardens, Mayor Gilbert III, who has Bahamian roots. And after speaking with him, he was able to, and his city was able to donate a plane full, Mr. Speaker, of goods, which I was able to take from Fort Lauderdale into Freeport 2 weeks ago, and was able to share with my colleagues there in Grand Bahama. So I wish to thank the people of Miami Gardens and Mayor Gilbert for their contribution, and all of the international community that's contributed to our this time in the sad time in our country, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, Tall Pines, obviously we're collecting goods at our constituency office, and we have already visited, a team of us have already visited the Red Cross, Bahamas Red Cross, and have spent several hours there last week. We intend to continue to support our brothers and sisters in Grand Bahama and Abaco, Mr. Speaker. I add condolences, as the members have already done, to those who have lost their loved ones. Speaker, I also wish to thank Ms. Alfreda Strawn, who is the president of the Southwest Crime Watch Association, and more particularly the Fire Trail Crime Watch Association, who have made donations to persons who are living in the Tall Pines constituency, who are housing members from these affected communities. I want to congratulate her and congratulate all other members of Tall Pines who continue to contribute. And so, Mr. Speaker, secondly, I wish to, with your leave, thank the members, particularly the Prime Minister, who has acceded to us celebrating 290 years of political democracy, or parliamentary democracy in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Speaker, we had great plans of big celebrations prior to the hurricane, and we decided nonetheless to use a Bahamian term, water down those celebrations in light of the hurricane and the effects. We were able, Mr. Speaker, to still celebrate, I think, in a grand way. We were able to visit on this Sunday Bethel Baptist Church on Meaden Street, which is historical importance to the Bahamas. We want to thank Pastor Stewart, who delivered a very, very powerful message to us. And the whole service, Mr. Speaker, was indeed a powerful service. and in line with our 290th anniversary as a parliamentary democracy. We also wish to thank, Mr. Speaker, with your leave, the University of the Bahamas, again, another important institution in the history of the Bahamas. They entertained us and hosted us to a lecture series, particularly focusing on women in politics. And at that series, we heard from Dame Janet Bostwick and former Speaker Atalia Johnson. Unfortunately, the other two members, Ruby Ann Darling and Honorable Cynthia Mother Pratt, were sick, and they weren't able to attend. But we intend to have, Mr. Speaker, other lecture series, which we hope they and other parliamentarians, present and past, would be able to contribute and speak about how we got to this 290th point in our history and where we will be going moving forward. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, we wish to thank those radio and TV bodies that assisted us in advertising and speaking to this event and the importance of democracy. We were able to spend a week on various radio shows and TV shows. So we want to thank them for that opportunity and invite the general public to view the parliamentary station, which you, Mr. Speaker, you have highlighted the fact that we're trying to revamp it and really make it a parliamentary station that you could get documentaries and education about Parliament in the Bahamas and a good history about the Bahamas and democracy. So we invite all of our members to contribute to that effort because we'll be doing interviews, particularly with our leaders in our country and past leaders, Mr. Speaker. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to make the announcement that we are working in line with developing this political democracy and in line with our commitment to international associations and more recently our trips that dealt with including civil society. We want to introduce in the coming weeks, maybe another week, a parliamentary Facebook, a parliamentary YouTube, a parliamentary Instagram, whereby not only members will be able to make their announcements or bring their ideas to the Bahamian public, but more importantly, Mr. Speaker, civil society and general members of the public would be able to work with us and liaison with us and give their contributions as we move to deepen and strengthen democracy in the Bahamas. It's always been your view, Mr. Speaker, that we have to deepen and strengthen democracy. And I'm putting it to this House and the country that these avenues of social media would be able to bring us more in touch with our communities and strengthen this great democracy as we celebrate 290 years, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I finally add to my condolences of Wells, Honorable Wells, and the Chipman family. I was able to represent you, Mr. Speaker, at the funeral with our good colleague, the member for Centerville, and wish him and his family and the Wells family, on behalf of the people of Tall Pines and my family, our condolences. I thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Member for Pinewood, just before, I just want to add to the thank yous of the Deputy Speaker and the member for Tall Pines. Sincere thanks to the members, the staff of Parliament that really worked hard to get that celebration organized properly, and so we want to thank you for that. You would notice here at the clerk's desk that there are two new faces here. On my right, or the right of the clerk, is Miss Tanisha Penn Bain, who has joined the service. And on our left is Mr. Rashad Flowers. We expect Ms. Asheran Lightburn to join us shortly. And so as we move forward, I also would like to just mention before the member for Pine Ridge that you will see a number of new persons moving about. We have also assembled a team of persons to begin to develop the parliamentary channel. And as a consequence, you will see a number of persons. I'll introduce Parliament to them in due course. The chair now recognizes the Honourable Member for Pine Ridge.
Just wanted to take this opportunity to once again give my condolences to my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Centerville, the passing of his grandfather, Mr. John Chippy Chipman. I had the opportunity to attend that state-recognized funeral, and also want to give my condolences to the Wells family. What I really wanted to say to Mr. Speaker is I really wanted to stand here. I will have an opportunity to speak next week in the debate, but I did want to not miss this opportunity to extend my deepest sympathy to the persons in East Grand Bahama who lost family members as a result of Hurricane Dorian, and the people of Abaco, both citizens and non-citizens. And I also want to extend that all the way to the Deputy Prime Minister, the Member of Parliament for East Grand Bahama, who I also know would have been feeling this burden and pressure, recognizing that this has been one of the most catastrophic storms that Grand Bahama has ever witnessed and felt. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to encourage Pine Ridge and to let them know that my prayers are with them and to remain strong as I continue the release efforts. And also, I want to commend one of my colleagues, particularly the Member of Parliament for Marco City, who have been there with me in the struggle as well and has done what he could to seek to assist me. And I just wanted to say thank you for at least reaching out and remembering me during this time. Just the simple reaching out and talking to me and saying, hey, you're all right. That meant a lot to me to know that you at least wanted to know if I was alive and well after the storm. Thank you. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your leave, I'll be about 20 seconds and I'm done. Mr. Speaker, first I'd like to welcome the new members, but as a strict institutionalist, I regard days such as this as very serious days. And I think one who's been around for a little while in this honorable place, when certain issues are being discussed of national import, I think all other matters should be done away with. And today, from my perspective, not to criticize you, sir, but also, like I mentioned, one who's been around a little while, I would think in time to come, when the Prime Minister is going to be addressing issues such as this that we did today with Hurricane Dorian, I think all the other matters should fade away because we're going to come back next week once again to discuss the aftermath, where we're going with the restoration process. But on behalf of Her Majesty's loyal opposition, Mr. Speaker, we'd like to extend to the government, the people of our country, and those who have been affected, especially the members of Parliament for Grand Bahama and the Abacos, our best and wishes and thoughts and our prayers are with them. And as we continue to look forward to building a stronger and better Abaco and Grand Bahama and a better Bahamas in the 21st century and beyond. And once again, I note the fact that we look forward to next week's debate. But even then, Mr. Speaker, I hope that we can somewhat curtail if there would be any level of vitriol as we look forward to our people need a sense of lifting and us rising to another occasion to build this and make this a better country, especially for those who have been so affected by the hurricane. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Garden Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too rise to extend my condolences to all of the families affected by the last hurricane, and to say that Garden Hills is here to support you and to work with you. Speaker, I also thought it would be remiss if I sit in my seat and not extend condolences to the family of two of my constituents who have contributed much to this Bahamas. And I speak about the Honorable Tennyson Wells, who is a member of Garden Hills, who I've worked with when I was in another government agency, and who has made his mark and contributed so much to the Bahamian people. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, to my classmate, Henry McIntosh. A lot of people know him as just an ordinary musician, but I had the great opportunity when we attended Highbury High at the time to worked with and to be a classmate of Mr. McIntosh, and to his family, lives in Garden Hills number 2, I say to them condolences, and I will make every effort to attend his funeral whenever it is called. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Terrell Count is a young man from Exuma who was very quiet. Some people say unassuming. He made his mark, and at a very tender age, Mr. Speaker, he's moved on to see his God. Mr. Speaker, when I go to Abaco, everyone knows Kai Mills. Kai has been a great friend, and just during the hurricane, his mother passed. And I say to the Mills family in Abaco, condolences. We all love you, Kai. We know who you are and what you do. And I know you do it in love, and your interest is in the people of Abaco. So I want to thank you for your work and to remind me of your mother and her work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very brief. Mr. Speaker, in 1987, the Department of Environmental Health Services Act was passed. The act established the Environmental Health Services Act, Mr. Speaker, was passed in 1987. And that act established the Department of Environmental Health Services. And the Department of Environmental Health Services, as the name suggests, historically was under the Ministry of Health. So today, for us in the Ministry of Environment, today was a very, very historic day, and we believe that it will go down in history because it is and represents the moment that we begin the transformation of the legislative landscape in relation to the environment. Mr. Speaker, I was very pleased to lay on the table of the House of Assembly for the first time and have read the strongest and most robust suite of environmental legislation in the history of our country, in the form of the Ministry of Environment Bill, the Environmental Planning and Protection Bill, the Environmental Protection Control of Plastic Bill, the Bahamas National Trust Amendment Bill, Bahamas Protected Areas Fund Amendment Bill, and the Tariff Amendment Number 2 Bill. Mr. Speaker, we fixed the long-standing issues at the landfill. We fixed the emissions of oil at Clifton Pier, and today we fix the legislative vacuum that allows unscrupulous developers to continue to pollute and enhances the ability of two of our senior NGOs to function better in the very important jobs that they perform. Mr. Speaker, I am so honored and humbled today, and I'm very grateful to those who worked so hard to make this possible, in particular my cabinet colleagues, the Law Reform Commission, of course Her Majesty's loyal opposition, and the countless number of environmental groups who gave us direction, support, and feedback as we undertook this endeavor. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Further member statements? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Yamaco.
I didn't rise, and I'm going to be very brief, Mr. Speaker, to concur with all of the sentiments expressed in terms of condolences given. But I want to particularly identify the Most Honorable Prime Minister and commend him and the persons that support him for the level of sobriety and calmness shown in such great travesty and calamity. But Mr. Speaker, I know that this is an opportunity, knowing the people of the Bahamas, for creativity and innovation. And so I extend condolences on behalf of the great people of the Amacroft constituency to all of those persons who lost their loved ones during the Hurricane Dorian. Mr. Speaker, you could not imagine my surprise when on one day just before the last election I walked into the then headquarters and saw Mr. Tennyson Wells, Mr. Pierre Depute, and Mr. George Capron sitting in the office, all coming to support me in that effort. And so his family has always been a part of my legal career. And so I would like to extend condolences to his wife and his children on the passing of Mr. Tennyson Wells. Mr. Colin Trotman. We know his great work. And also Mr. John Chippy Chipman. I met him when I was a boy doing apprenticeship work. And he would come around, and he was always a cultural icon. Mr. Speaker, I would like to apologize publicly. I thank the Prime Minister for appointing me as Minister of Financial Services, Trade and Industry. But one of the things I realized in leadership, Mr. Speaker, is that this is a partnership. A partnership for us at the ministry is that's a tripartite partnership, which sees industry, civil society, and government, and our people, and persons in the international diaspora, working to continue to develop our third pillar. On yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I was graciously invited by Garnet Bank and Trust to speak at their board meeting. Unfortunately, a very urgent, I was in cabinet, and a very urgent matter, personal matter arose, and the Prime Minister gave me, allowed me to go and deal with that, and that took up that time. So I want to just apologize to them and to say that we will be in contact with them to have a meeting and to see how we can do that. Mr. Speaker, I would just like to acknowledge someone who is here sitting in the audience, in the public gallery, Mr. Lloyd Doda, Mr. Bimini Edgecombe, my brother-in-law, who's married to one of my beloved sisters. May God continue to bless you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member. This will be the final person from Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to first give condolences to all of the families in Abaco, Grand Bahama, and throughout the Bahamas who would have lost relatives during Hurricane Dorian, and to also extend condolences to the Prime Minister on the passing of his brother, to the Chipman family, who I have known pretty much all of my adult life, on the passing of the cultural legend Chippy, and of course condolences to the Wells family on the passing of Tennyson. Tennyson has a quality that I admire greatly. He was his own man and spoke his mind no matter who was present, and that is often absent in this business that we are in, Mr. Speaker. And so for that, I say that to the Wells family, you have much to be proud of. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say to residents in Grand Bahama in general, but certainly Marco City in particular, that the members of Parliament on the island, we stand with you. We ask you to keep the faith. We will work tirelessly to assist you in rebuilding in Marco City. Since being evacuated, we have been on the ground every single day, and I want to thank the team, the coalition that we have built, not just of those who have assisted prior to the election, but Grand Bahamians of all political stripes, especially my brother and friend Norris Bain, all of those persons who have been working 12 hours plus a day to assist, whether it's providing hot meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whether it is delivering care packages, grocery packages, or whatever is required, to let you know that we will stand with you. Beginning this coming week, we start the distribution of building supplies, beginning in Grasmere, that had really the highest amount of flooding in the Marco City constituency. And we will work in each constituency where we get calls from either the Member of Parliament or from residents to assist throughout. And so God bless you. We ask you to keep the faith. We will be with you really until we have rebuilt Grand Bahama better and stronger than it was before.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, I must do this on behalf of my wife and the constituents and residents of the Nassau Village constituency. We wish to extend and express our deepest sympathies to the Thompson family on the passing of Leland Thompson. Our deepest sympathies and condolences go out to his wife, Keturah, and our two sons, and the two sons. Leland Thompson was the chairman of the Nassau Village Free National Movement Association. And he was my campaign manager, and I owe being here in this place today a lot to him. He was a committed campaigner and relentless in his pursuit in getting me elected. And so I feel it's a shocking experience for me. He was a young man, only 48 years old. He was enjoying a weekend on Paradise with his wife on his 48th birthday when his heart failed. And so on behalf of all the residents of Nassau Village, we will miss Leland and we express our deepest sympathies. Appointment of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to renew all matters in the name of the government and signals that the House will adjourn and return on Wednesday, the 9th of October at 10 a.m. Mr. Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
The opposition is not here, and this could be a moment where I could take some liberties, but I shall not. We will renew all matters in the name of the opposition and seek not to wipe the agenda clear of their issues.
Adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns until Wednesday, the 9th of October at 10 a.m.
Is there a seconder? Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to 10 a.m. the 9th of October. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns.
Seconded. Second. Honorable members, it have been moved and seconded that the House do now adjourn to 10 a.m. the 9th of October 2019. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 9th of October.
All right.